when Bobby Kennedy ordered that vaccines not have mercury anymore, people were incensed. Don't take away our mercury. Don't take away the mercury we're trying to give our babies. And the same thing happened with Tylenol. Don't take away our Tylenol that we're trying to give to our babies, when maybe it's not always the best decision. But these are all hard decisions. And the question that my book ends with is, who shall decide? How should parents make decisions when their pediatricians are coming at them and saying, you have to take all these vaccines? Interesting discipline, by the way, pediatrics. If you think back to your own childhood, you didn't get sick very much. You didn't have to go to the doctor very much, and kids don't. They're born, the vast majority of them, inherently healthy. And then we begin to hit them with all the toxins and all the processed foods and all the bad behavior of sitting around online that causes weight gain and all of that. But they start off quite healthy. I didn't go to the pediatrician in my entire life as a kid, other than when I broke my leg. And it didn't have to be a pediatrician. That's who it happened to be. Today, however, people go to the pediatrician all the time for wellness checks. We got to be sure your seemingly healthy young kid who's just running around athletically all day with seemingly boundless energy, we got to be sure that your kid is well. And while he or she is here, let's take the opportunity to inject them with one of these vaccine products that we're going to do 140 times before they're 18. So pediatrics itself, which is, of course, is all, not all, but in large measure pro-vaccine, sells these vaccines and makes its business by getting you in there to get these vaccines, and of course charges for doing so. Am I saying they're all corrupt and terrible? No, but they're all following a priesthood in the CDC, and very few pediatricians will know as much as a single reader of this book will know. Very few. In fact, I've got a chapter in here called Ask Your Doctor. And you ask your doctor, what are the vaccine ingredients? Not ask him by email when he'll just go check ChatGPT or the CDC website. Ask him in person.
Who debunked it
Yeah.
and why?
Yeah.
And what is the answer? I mean, have you heard such an answer?
Yeah, that's sort of how I started with this book, was to say we all know that the link between, or any link between, any vaccine product and brain damage or autism has been debunked. Everybody knows that's been debunked, and only a stupid person would claim otherwise. It's been debunked. And then you ask, how was it debunked? You, so smart person, how was it debunked? And who debunked it? And why was it debunked? And all of a sudden, nobody can answer those questions. Those three simple questions. Answer, by the way, how was it debunked? By the IOM going into a room and having closed-door meetings that are funny as hell. Who debunked it? The IOM. Why was it debunked? This is an interesting question, too. Why? It's not because Bobby Kennedy, he wasn't even involved in the topic. It's because there were many, many scientific studies that showed a connection between childhood vaccines and autism and brain damage. Why? Why were vaccines even a suspect? Because when mercury damages the human body, it damages the body neurologically. It causes the very things that are evident and apparent in brain damage. That's what it does. And so when you had these thousands of parents say, I took my kid to be vaccinated, and the next day my kid was gone, mentally gone, no eye contact anymore, no talking anymore, listless, maybe it has something to do with that vaccine. So it wasn't Bobby Kennedy who got the idea, it was reality itself. That's the big problem. And there's a scene in this book where they talk about the fact that seizures that follow vaccination is normal. It's perfectly healthy.
Perfectly normal.
Yeah, why would that
Perfectly
be a problem? So your baby has a seizure that ends up in the emergency room. So what? That just is called febrile seizures.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
It's comfortable.
exactly. It's not like, it's right. It's not like your baby was driving a car or operating heavy machinery. So it just had a seizure. It's totally normal. Well, the interesting thing is that there are two studies I cite in the book that talk about how it's a very serious problem. Seizures after vaccination is a very serious problem. Not because of the seizures or the emergency room visit at 2 in the morning. It's a problem because it causes vaccine hesitancy. And vaccine hesitancy is the one thing we must never have. I know, by the way, what actually causes vaccine hesitancy. It's reality. No, You take your baby to the hospital at 2 in the morning, with seizures, and your baby's eyes rolling back in its head, and you'll be very thoughtful when they tell you, "Oh yeah, that's from the vaccine. That's no problem. That's the most normal thing in the world." You'll be very thoughtful before you'll do it again. Lots of parents do. They do it the second time, and some of them lose their babies that way.
Okay, you're not anti-vax, and I know you're not an expert, but it's very difficult to read this book and not come to a conclusion that's rooted in profound skepticism. What vaccines, if any, are you comfortable with?
There is a vaccine called the BCG vaccine that's given for tuberculosis. Now, the actual number one killer in the world, infectious killer in the world, transmissible killer in the world, is tuberculosis. 1.5 million children a year. And it's not very prevalent in the United States, but it's very big around the world. And it's had a vaccine for more than 100 years without the new technology that we don't understand yet, like mRNA. And yet that vaccine is not given in the United States. Go figure. That's the vaccine they don't give. The one that actually helps to prevent the number one respiratory killer in the world, which is tuberculosis. Now, why? Why is it not given? Well, they might say because the prevalence of tuberculosis is so rare in the United States. However, that doesn't work because there were 9,000 cases of tuberculosis in the United States last year. And if you say that that prevalence isn't enough, then how do you deal with the fact that you're giving it for 10 cases of tetanus, for example?
Tetanus, or how about zero polio?
Zero polio, and yet we're still giving the vaccine. That's right. And the only polio cases in the United States, by the way, there's just been one since 1986. One, and it's polio. It's the vaccine-induced poliomyelitis. In asking what vaccine I believe in, I think this BCG vaccine is actually very valuable. It is helpful for fighting cancer. It is helpful for fighting other respiratory diseases. And you could actually make the claim that it improves health, which you cannot make for the others. The others are demonstrated time and again to have unfavorable consequences, in addition to preventing the disease they're intended to prevent. Many of them do that, meaning many of them work. So, am I anti-vaccine or pro-vaccine? What I'm anti is the deification of these supposed experts who act like this is a religion. And what am I, by the way, for questioning this? What am I? Crazy.
Well, you're the
That's what they
denier,
would
man.
say. Crazy, debunked. What is Bobby Kennedy for questioning it? Who, by the way, wanted nothing to do with this topic. He was talking about mercury in fish, and nobody called him anti-fish. But when he started talking about mercury in vaccines, what happened to him? 19 years.
In the
Unable
wilderness.
to get on television. Couldn't be interviewed on a news program. Crazy. He's crazy. They had to say he's crazy because they don't want to engage with the arguments. And every time that anybody refuses to engage with the argument and instead does what ChatGPT did to me, saying that I'm, floating debunked theories and things that have long been debunked. Well, when you see the debunking method, debunking ain't so grand anymore.
You quote, what's his name? Hotez in the
Yes,
book.
Peter Hotez, yeah.
As saying maybe one of the all-time dumb things. I'd like to hear that if it comes to mind. But I'm also thinking of some people that I kind of respect. Writers and thoughtful thinkers, some of whom are at the National Review, who have called Bobby a crackpot. And I guess it should be said too that you and Bobby have been friends for decades. You go way back.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for him, and I have lots of people who've been friends who I wouldn't endorse their process or their belief systems. But Bobby was a trial attorney who took on corporation after corporation for toxins being put into our environment, and there's no better example of that than being injected into our internal environment.
Soon may the noblemen come to bring a bottle for everyone. One day when the waiting is done, we'll take a drink and go.
And he was very successful. He was very well regarded, very well liked. Cover of every magazine as one of the 100 most influential Americans, and he'd done so much for the environment until that fateful day that he published the book called Thimerosal, Let the Science Speak. Thimerosal is ethyl mercury. And at that moment, that was it. No TV shows, no articles anymore. All his past articles taken out and debunked, and that was the the pharma's third rail, because it's not that he said something bad about vaccines. It's that you can't say anything about vaccines because they can't stand up and walk around on their own. They're not capable of mounting a viable argument, and that's when it becomes a religion. And that's how it's treated, as a religion. I want to get that Peter Hotez quote. I found it. Here's 4 quotes in a row from scientists. The first one: in science, consensus is irrelevant. There is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus, period. That's said by Michael Crichton, graduate of Harvard Medical School and went on to become a great writer.
Brilliant.
Here's another quote, this one from Carl Sagan. Science is a process of learning and discovery and debate at its heart. And debate is at its heart, Carl Sagan. Here's one from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a more current science. In science, the debate is never over. And I end with the dumbest quote I could find from Dr. Peter Hotez. Quote, science is not up for debate. Close quote.
Well, with great respect to Dr. Fauci, isn't I am the science a strong contender?
It is, but I was done with Fauci already by this point, and Hotez needed some attention. I mean, listen, I'm not saying a thing bad about Hotez. He's an idiot. And he's the one who demonstrated his idiocy, not me, when he says science is not up for debate. And he's in the religion, by the way, and he's a vaccine maker. And he's basically, to him, you all saw that when he appeared on Joe Rogan, Rogan said, will you debate Bobby Kennedy? And he said no, because science is not up for debate, apparently. But I think he was offered ultimately millions of dollars to attend that debate. But he's not going to debate Bobby Kennedy because Bobby Kennedy is crazy and not a scientist. You don't debate with non-scientists. Well, listen, I'm not a scientist, but I speak English, and I can read the CDC website, and I can read these quotes that I'm reading. The idea that you have to be a scientist to have an opinion about what you eat or what you swallow or what you inject into your baby, wow, that's a bad idea.
Isn't it interesting, though? I mean, and I think probably a net positive in this sea, this miasma of chattering and certainty, which we're obviously long on. The long form podcast for the genuine, curious biped who really wants to understand, or at least inquire as to how to be healthier, how to get in better shape, how to have a better diet, how to understand the very things we're grappling with right now. I mean, I don't think you and I have ever lived, certainly in a time where there was more information. Granted, the great challenge now is to separate the wheat from the chaff.
Yes.
But if you're curious, there are lots of tires to kick.
It's true. And this, of course, threatens government profoundly. And if you agree, Mike, we can try something here live on the air that I didn't even tell you about, and that's where editing will come in if it's no good. But it's a very interesting exploration of how AI can function in our lives and how important it is to ask that second follow-up question. Would you buy into a little experiment I can show you? And you want to try it? I can give you the questions. See if it works.
Yeah, sure. Let me try it.
Who killed Robert Kennedy in 1968?
Who killed Robert Kennedy in 1968? Yeah. Sirhan killed him.
Okay, now ask how many shots were fired at Robert Kennedy.
How many shots were fired at Robert Kennedy in 1968? Generating. Based on official reports, Robert F. Kennedy was shot 4 times, with 3 bullets hitting him and a 4th passing through his jacket. However, the total number of shots fired during the assassination is disputed, and there is evidence to suggest more than one shooter.
Oh, that's a good answer. That's probably my responsibility for a lot of these conversations. Ask if Sirhan was standing in front of or behind Robert Kennedy.
Was Sirhan standing in front of Robert Kennedy or behind him? Sirhan was standing behind Robert F. Kennedy when he shot him. Kennedy had just turned to shake hands with someone when Sirhan stepped out from behind a tray stacker and fired at close range.
Ask it to reconsider whether he was standing in front of or behind.
Reconsider whether Sirhan was standing in front of Robert Kennedy or behind him. Generating. A discrepancy exists between eyewitness accounts and forensic evidence regarding Sirhan's position relative to Robert F. Kennedy during the assassination. Eyewitnesses generally place Sirhan in front of Kennedy, while the autopsy report indicates the fatal shot was fired at point-blank range from behind him. This has fueled controversy and theories of a second gunman.
Ask it, who is Thane Cesar?
Thing?
Yeah, Thane. Who is Thane Cesar?
Who is Thane Cesar? Oh, I got it. The suspected second gunman is Thane Eugene Cesar, an Ace Guard service employee hired by the Ambassador Hotel for that night. He is implicated in several ways. He was standing immediately behind Senator Kennedy at the time of the shooting and said he was holding the senator's arm.
Was he armed?
Was Thane Cesar armed? The LAPD, which interviewed Cesar shortly after the shooting, did not regard him as a suspect and did not ask to see his gun. Cesar stated that he did own a .22 caliber Harrington and Richardson pistol, and he showed it to LAPD Sergeant P.E. Osteen on 24 June 1968.
So he was standing immediately behind Robert Kennedy. He hated Robert Kennedy. This is me talking. You can stop with that. He's standing immediately behind him. He hated him. He had a top secret clearance. He worked for one night as a guard for a company called Ace Security. The round that killed Robert Kennedy was upwards and from the right. The gun was right against Robert Kennedy's head, according to the autopsy. All the rounds that hit him were fired from behind. Sirhan was standing 6 feet in front, and yet AI began by telling you and me, Sirhan killed Robert Kennedy. The first question you ask, you must never stop there with AI. You have to keep going, because what you get on the first question is the official consensus answer on anything. And what you'll get on the follow-up questions is far more significant and valuable.
It probably wasn't available when you generated those early reports for some of your clients at the height of not at the height, but at the onset of the lockdowns. I remember talking to you about, you did a pretty deep analysis on what was happening in Italy. And and that, how useful would AI have been, or could it have been, when you were trying to get to the heart of some of the way the information on hand had been spun, omitted, and leaned into in ways that just, in hindsight, don't make a lot of sense?
Well, what we learned, that was in March of 2020, and for a group of clients, we wanted to learn what the risks were. And what we learned from the first data that came out, which was out of northern Italy, was that the average age of death was 81, meaning that the people who died of COVID had already outlived the national lifespan average. They'd already won the lottery in that sense. And then we learned that the things it would take to die from COVID included catching COVID, then not treating it, then not going to the hospital, then getting very sick, then going to the hospital, then being one of the small percentage who would be admitted, then being one of the very small percentage that would be admitted to intensive care. And even then you had a 90% chance of survival. In other words, this was not the instant death drama that we were told. Who did die of COVID, by the way? Probably the single most remarkable statistic you can find out of the COVID drama is that 71% of the deaths attributed to COVID in Canada were people living in nursing homes. So that wasn't presented to us that way during all the COVID drama from all the marketing and promotion. It was not, if you're not living in a nursing home, your odds are overwhelmingly favorable that you're going to be just fine. It was quite the opposite. It was, even children will die, and we have to inoculate even the children, and who had just about zero consequence from COVID. The other thing we learned was that 3.7 that the people who died of COVID had 3.7 existing fatal comorbidities, meaning they were already very sick. And so the idea that just a healthy person, I was 65 years old, and was told, oh, if you're over 60 and you get COVID, you're dead. That was the original information. But after I got the Italy information, it was quite apparent to me that I would be just fine when I got COVID, which of course I did, which of course everybody did, including all the vaccinated people got it 2 or 3 times. You could generously say mistakes and ungenerously say lies and concealments. And I'll tell you the weirdest one. I wrote, a passage for Cause Unknown. I wrote the afterword, and I helped Ed Dowd with the book. And a lot of the information was based on COVID deaths around the world, which came from Johns Hopkins University, called Worldometers, funded by Bill Gates, by the way. Only afterwards, only years later, did a very smart friend of mine say, how do you think they got those daily deaths from all those countries, 190 countries in the world, that they could report on the daily deaths that crawled along the bottom of the CNN screen, for example? And it never occurred to me to wonder. I thought, well, deaths, that must be from death certificates. No, death certificates aren't filed the day of death. And how could they know, since the deaths, these people were sick with other things as well? How in the world did they do that? And you know what it turned out to be, Mike? Very unfortunately, modeling. It was the same thing when we were told this is the number of deaths in this country and this is the number of deaths in this country. And yesterday, the number of deaths were this, and yesterday, the number of COVID cases was this. Never before in our lives could you be a case without being sick. But you could be a COVID case, just for testing positive. And testing positive, as we know, did not mean being sick. And in large measure, there were many more positive tests than there were people being sick. But all over the world, I believed that too. I fell for it too. And I was saying, oh, look at the number in North Korea. Look at the number in South Korea. What can we learn about this? The number of deaths daily reported. You couldn't do that in any country in the world. Could you get accurately the daily death rate from something?
How charitable should we be, and how angry should we be in light of all of this? Because I talk to people all of the time who are already ready to shrug it off. Yeah. It was an unprecedented time. People were doing their best. There was a lot of confusion and fear. Let's just get on with it.
Yeah, the idea that any world event is just an organic event that our federal public health officials were scurrying around to react to. I just don't believe it anymore, unfortunately. And anybody interested can go to YouTube and look at Event 201. And if that doesn't put you on the same page I'm on, I'll be very surprised. Event 201 is an event funded by the Gates Foundation and attended by representatives from CIA, from the Chinese CDC, from the US CDC, from the military, from CBS News and various media organizations. And it happened in October of 2019. And it's all about a flu-like virus that's going to become a pandemic in the world and how we will handle it. It was a tabletop exercise to say, how would we handle this thing? And you know what they discuss at Event 201? They don't discuss the medical responses. They don't discuss how they'll improve people's health or protect people's health. They discuss how they'll manage misinformation. And what is misinformation? Misinformation is, or disinformation. Disinformation is a great phrase because that misinformation is accidentally inaccurate. That's the definition of it. Disinformation is intentionally inaccurate. That's done by those terrible people who promote disinformation, like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And then there's malinformation, my favorite of all of them. Malinformation is true, but unhelpful to the government. So misinformation and disinformation and malinformation, that's what they talked about in October of 2019 as the world was gearing up for, lo and behold, what an amazing coincidence happened right afterwards, in October and November, a new virus evolved in nature and was spreading around the world, and we're just doing the best we can. We're doing the best we can to resolve it. I don't believe it anymore.
So you're a malinformationist.
I'm a malinformationist. Yeah, screw you too. You're almost as bad as I am. How dare you, you and your name calling? But
Well,
right,
look, it's you're a teller of inconvenient truths.
for sure.
And I don't know if you've seen that movie, An Inconvenient Study. Is this thing on your radar yet?
Oh yes, I saw it, and if you didn't raise it, I was going to recommend it to everybody. It's really, really good information, a really good material, and very, I thought, very well made. I'll ask you what you thought of it if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it yet. Chuck
Oh,
recommended it to me and thought we ought to get the people on to put that together. But
We ought to get that great Native American Del Bigtree.
yeah.
on
By the
right.
way, I know him well. I just recently spent some time with him in Austin, and I'd be very glad to introduce you guys to him.
Please do. I saw the movie already, but I'm having like 8 people over tonight to watch it
Oh,
again.
I'm so glad.
I thought it was fascinating and jaw dropping, and I was telling Mike about it. It's very much like your book. It's right in line with your book.
Yeah, I'm so glad, and of course with filmmaking, that reaches people on a different level, and I really strongly encourage. You don't need the encouragement, Chuck, but you, Mike, who runs from any information and is just denies everything and falls for everything that the government tells you to believe, you should probably see it.
all right, just be patient with me, all right? Baby steps. Crawl, walk, run. I wanted to talk to you after Butler, the assassination attempt, and I really wanted to talk to you last month after Charlie was killed. Just from a security standpoint, I know you can't know, but when these things happen, like what goes on in your medulla oblongata? Like what does your brain do in the immediate wake of that, and what, if anything, do you have to say about either or both events?
Well, I'll talk first about Charlie. It just broke my heart. I didn't know him. I didn't even know a great deal about him. I'd seen him do debates on campus, and I really loved the fact that he was, committed to dialogue and discussion. And it just broke my heart that he was killed. It really, I had a very, emotional reaction to it, and I thought it was a terrible thing for society that in the very process of engaging with our division, which is what he was doing. Now, people will say he was divisive. I didn't find that, but nonetheless, everybody's entitled to their opinion, no matter what. He was going around the country and the world and engaging with people over divisive topics. And so the first thing was an emotional reaction. Now in terms of my profession and my work in anti-assassination and in studying assassinations, my early reactions are that it's difficult to learn what actually occurred at any of these events. It's difficult to understand the motivation of people behind them. It's difficult to draw conclusions because of the very issue we've been discussing in this last hour, which is the inability to accept at face value information that those in power want to present. And so, as in Butler, the very fast resolution of everything you need to know is right here. It was that young kid over there, and he's dead, so there's no trial. There's nothing further to explore or to do. And, in these cases, the other assassination attempt at the golf course, which has a much more problematic bad guy aligned with it, in that he was, several times in Ukraine, even though he was supposedly anti-war. He was a recruiter, acting as a recruiter for soldiers around the world to go. Is he crazy? Maybe he's crazy too. But the concept of the lone gunman, which we just took a little look at in that AI exploration of the well-documented assassination of Senator Robert Kennedy, where everybody knows he was killed by a Palestinian man named Sirhan Sirhan. And yet, when you get into it, you find out that it isn't so. I have it's not even a skeptical reaction, Mike. It's a quite scientific reaction. My work in anti-assassination is physics, and it's and protection of public figures in environments like Charlie was in mostly boils down to athleticism. It's an athletic contest, usually between somebody wielding a handgun and the protectors, and where they're standing and how it all works is what I tend to study. In this case, it's I can't come up with a better phrase than to say it's too soon to know. And will we ever understand all of it? I just don't know. There are certainly elements to this narrative that was, immediately set forth and exploited that probably will not withstand physics when we can really understand all the details. It's a very unsatisfying answer. It's unsatisfying to me too, because we are subject to the two competing influences that we're dealing with. One is those in power and official narratives, and the other is the massive amount of information, false and accurate and speculative, that we all have to sift through via the internet.
Do you think Cesar did it? It seems clear that Sirhan was a patsy, and the country just hasn't got the memo yet.
Well, I'll just go a little further onto that. Yes, I think Thane Cesar killed Senator Robert Kennedy, and Sirhan had a trial that didn't get into any of the physics or issues. His lawyer was the same lawyer as for Johnny Rosselli, of all people, a known participant in assassinations for the CIA. The whole case is just ridiculous. But just to stay with the physics for a moment, ChatGPT or Grok will quickly acknowledge for you that the number of shots attested to by witnesses was 13 or 14, and Sirhan's gun held only 8 shots. That the number of shots demonstrated by review of the audio recordings was 13 or 14, and Sirhan's gun held only 8 shots. That Sirhan was always standing in front of Senator Kennedy, and Thane Cesar was always standing immediately behind him, and that the shots were upward. All the shots that hit Senator Kennedy were from behind him, not from in front of him, and the shot that killed him was a contact wound from behind him. So there's nothing about the Sirhan case where the official narrative can stand up and walk around on its own. So yes, Thane Cesar, who immediately, by the way, left the country and moved to the Philippines, where he eventually died some years ago. We don't know how he was supported during that time. We know he hated Robert Kennedy. We have a bunch of public quotes regarding things he said about Robert Kennedy. And he likely was aligned with bad actors in a broader conspiracy. But is Sirhan the shooter? No. By the way, Sirhan, how did I come to know this? I'd written an actual book called Just 2 Seconds, which is about the physics of assassination. And one of it studies 1,400 cases. And one of them was the Sirhan case, which I bought the narrative on. So if you get an old version of that book, it says Sirhan fired 8 rounds and killed Senator Kennedy and hit 6 other people as well, including Senator Kennedy's best friend, who was hit in the head. And he came to Bobby Kennedy, the Bobby Kennedy Jr. that we know, and he came to Bobby Kennedy and said, would you be willing to look at the autopsy report? Years after. Bobby was in his 60s. And then Bobby read the autopsy report. It was quite clear that all the shots were from behind. And it was quite clear that Sirhan fired only 2 shots before being knocked over by people who were protecting Senator Kennedy. And so he went and met with Sirhan. Bobby Kennedy did, and then he petitioned for his release and a reevaluation at his next parole hearing, which was denied. He and one of his brothers, by the way. And then I got into the case fully, and I have some, tremendously decisive information provided by and available to anybody via Grok or ChatGPT, where at the end of the discussion, the same entity that told you that Sirhan killed Robert Kennedy in 1968 will make the best possible case for why it could not be Sirhan Sirhan. So yes, that's my belief, and that took only all these years to get even me there as an expert on the topic, because the information that was available when I was a kid and Senator Kennedy was killed, you'd see a press conference, the cops would be there, the mayor would be there, and they would say, "We have our man, we've caught him, and he's a Palestinian who hated Senator Kennedy," and why would you disbelieve them? Why possibly would they not be telling the truth? And why would they be quick to identify a suspect and say the case is resolved? Well, all those same questions apply to Charlie Kirk. Why 3 days later do we have really weird texts written by the shooter that completely admit everything and completely make the case against him? Why? How did he get the gun on the roof? How did he get the gun off the roof? You don't see that in the video. They say he disassembled it. Why would he disassemble it and then reassemble it to place it to be, where it was found, wrapped in a towel? There's plenty of things that are questions. They're just skeptical questions. I can't, I don't have enough information to claim a conspiracy or to claim anything. And this is the part that's unsatisfying,
But
which is that we cannot know in these cases.
we can't know yet. But you have a fair amount of certainty decades after RFK.
Yes.
We're a month, 6 weeks maybe, after Charlie Kirk. And
Yes.
there's a level of skepticism now and dubity, it seems, that probably, I don't know, I wasn't old enough to remember, but, 6 weeks after RFK's assassination, did the country more or less buy the company line? Did
100%, not just the company, not just the country, but the family, 100%. Many family members to this day, including children of Senator Kennedy, still absolutely accept, as even Bobby Kennedy did until he was in his 60s and got this approach from his father's best friend, accept the official narrative. But the official narrative, by the way, in the case of Senator Kennedy, is absolutely unsupportable. It cannot stand and walk around on its own.
Well, I guess maybe the final thought has to do with, as we land the plane here, the topic that we talked about at length the first time we met, which was just this weird challenge that I think, back to most commonsensical, curious people who have components of faith in their life, but who are being called right now to be more skeptical than ever. I mean, if we're to find the truth, if we're to put our trust in any of the institutions that we've talked about, from doctors to politicians to journalists, we have to be insanely skeptical. And then on the other side, when it comes to the supernatural, when it comes to our faith, when it comes to these things that, we're called to be faithful. So I guess my question is, what's your advice to the average Joe who feels like he's being called to be faithful and rational, and at the same time being pushed into a level of skepticism that's right adjacent to cynicism? Because in this world, I just don't know how we can move forward, without proclaiming that the science is never settled and embracing a new level of skepticism.
Yeah, I wish I had a great answer, Mike. I'm struggling with that issue all the time myself. I don't, nobody. We have no difficulty believing something like the conference at Bonsi, which occurred and was transcribed, et cetera, that I talked about earlier. We have no difficulty believing that generals sit around a room and conspire on how a war will be mounted and prosecuted, and how it will be undertaken, and where it will be started, and how we'll move our troops, and where we'll fire the first missiles, et cetera. Why do I call that a conspiracy? Because sometimes we conclude those wars were wrongful. And that's all a conspiracy is one or more persons secretly getting together to take a wrongful action. Every product launch in America is preceded by a conspiracy, and I'm not exaggerating. What do? They sit around a boardroom and let's say, take a pharma product, for example. They say, how shall we most discredit the alternative products? That's number one. That's wrongful. How shall we most overinflate or inflate the value of our product. That's wrongful. How shall we deal with anybody who questions our product? That's wrongful. And then how shall we keep this all secret until the product is rolled out and we can advertise it in the most favorable way while suppressing the unfavorable? How shall we do all that? That's a conspiracy. And so the idea that people have this phrase conspiracy theorist, and they say, oh, if you talk about conspiracies, you're the problem. You've got some kind of a problem because you're a conspiracy theorist, which is a pejorative. It's ridiculous. People conspire to do things all day. I've done it myself all day in many, many ways. And it happens in corporations, and of course it happens in government. Why, by the way? Why more among the powerful than among the unpowerful? Because the powerful are less likely to get caught.
I worked for Tylenol for a few years. McNeil Labs hired me in another life, and I did maybe 20 commercials for them.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in a conference room. This, of course, was after the Tylenol scare, and a frankly pretty brilliant move to pull all that product and introduce the safety cap and
Yes.
talk about making, lemonade out of lemons. But the whole battle in analgesics in those days was really a zero-sum game. And the only way to get more people using Tylenol was to get less people using Excedrin or Bayer or Anacin. And they were all in this giant knife fight in a phone booth, making claims about taking comfort in our strength and all of these other things. And I only pointed out to say that if that happens in pharma, it probably happens in running shoes. It probably happens in every imaginable thing we've ever purchased. And
It's true. It's all true. That's
money,
correct.
money, money. It's the money, man.
Sure. And aspirin is interesting, and Tylenol is interesting because aspirin is grandfathered in so that its adverse effects, which it has, by the way, aspirin has some benefits and some adverse effects for some people. And so it causes, for example, stomach bleeds in some people. And that's a substantial cause of injury to a lot of people. And there's people who just shouldn't take aspirin. And then there's others who take low-dose aspirin for blood thinning to reduce the likelihood of heart attack. So all of these things take a little bit of thought. You can't just believe the advertisement in all these cases. Tylenol has a very bad profile for liver damage, and particularly bad for infants, as we're learning more and more in recent days. And yet, the second it comes from, say, Bobby Kennedy or President Trump, everybody says, when Bobby Kennedy ordered that vaccines not have mercury anymore, people were incensed. Don't take away our mercury. Don't take away the mercury we're trying to give our babies. And the same thing happened with Tylenol. Don't take away our Tylenol that we're trying to give to our babies, when maybe it's not always the best decision. But these are all hard decisions. And the question that my book ends with is, who shall decide? Do you want it to be the company deciding? And let me tell you a few things about Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson before you make that decision. All the criminal fines, all the outrageous bad conduct. I mean outrageously bad criminal conduct that they've been fined for more than any other institutions in the United States. And billions of dollars in fines. So, criminal fines. So do you want them to do it? Okay, if not them, do you want then the government to do it? That would be the government agency that's run by a former pharma guy who's about to be a pharma guy again when he joins the board of Pfizer as soon as he leaves. The guy who left, Dr. Peter Marks, who was the head of vaccines at FDA and resigned in protest over Robert Kennedy. I wonder where Peter is now. Oh, could he possibly be working for Eli Lilly? Oh, interesting. That's what's going on. And so there is, it's not corruption in the form of people twirling their mustaches. It's systemic corruption. It's the way things work. And so if I'm holding this brand new baby boy and I have to make a decision, and who do I want to make it? Either I'm going to really trust this particular pediatrician or this particular pharma manufacturer or this particular government agency, or learn about it and make a decision myself and be as comfortable as I can be with it. It's not easy, not easy.
Well, you can't put the back in the goose. And you're right about the aspirin. 80,000 people admitted to hospitals last year from stomach bleeding brought on by aspirin. I can't imagine how you could get that product today if it were just introduced onto the shelf without somebody like the IOM running some sort of study and say, yeah, like a seizure in your baby, it's just a little stomach bleeding. It's just a
Yeah.
little blood in the toilet. Don't let it freak you out. On the other hand, tell me I'm wrong, but is Vioxx going to wind up back on the market?
Oh, sure, for sure. It'll have a new name and it'll have a new some new use. And I mean things like even the dreaded remdesivir ended up back on the market. It hadn't even completed. It was stopped in the middle of the FDA trial for being too dangerous. Too many people were dying for it in the FDA trials, for God's sake. And it ended up on the market because of thanks to Anthony Fauci. And what did the people in the hospitals call it, by the way? Nurses that worked in intensive care nicknamed remdesivir "Run, death is near."
Oh my God.
It caused kidney failure, and yet it became the what did Fauci called it, the standard of care. It had never even been FDA approved, and it became the standard of care for COVID. Oh my God!
Look, you've pissed a lot of people off. You've intrigued a lot of people. I hope we sell some books. Who benefits key bono from the purchase of this book?
The reader. I hope that's the only intention. I don't get any royalties, and the publisher doesn't make any money from it. And we've all basically, the publisher is an important publisher in our country because it publishes all the books nobody else will publish.
Who are they?
Skyhorse Publishing. So they publish Woody Allen, who nobody would publish. Norman Mailer, because he, after his death, for God's sake, he got canceled. And books that are pro-vaccine and books that are anti-vaccine. And if you go to Amazon and you look up vaccine as a category, you'll see a whole bunch of books there, some of them tremendously pro-vaccine and some that are skeptical of vaccines, but they wouldn't be there if it weren't for Skyhorse Publishing. The company just deeply believes in publishing books and let the consumer read the books and decide, which information they want to credit and which information they want to discredit.
Well, not all truths are convenient. Not all facts are forbidden, but these are. It says so right on the cover. It's such a, I almost said fun. It's not fun, but it's compelling, and it's quick, and it's well-researched, and sure, it's controversial, but whatever you think of the claims and whatever you think of my guest, I'll tell you this, man. If you're having a dinner party and Gavin de Becker is available, invite him. I
want to add to that because I'm very hungry right now, having been here for 2 hours. So if anybody has an invitation, please email me right away.
You can come tonight and watch the movie with me and my friends
Thank
again.
you, Chuck. I really do like the movie.
We're going to have time.
I like the movie.
Dude, he's in Maui. You really think he's going to fly to freaking North Hollywood?
Mike, I'm doing it. I'm
thought that
headed to
counts.
the airport just to prove you wrong, which is, as you know, one of my favorite things to do.
Well, when you're there, do me a favor. Keep 6 feet between you and your fellow travelers, okay? It's the only rational thing to do. The book is called Forbidden Facts. You'd be a fool not to read it. Get it wherever fine books are sold, or even controversial ones. Chuck, always great to see you. Gavin, my friend, we have to hang up now, but stay online for a minute because I have some deeply personal things I need to ask you.
All right, let's record those too. Thank you very much
not.
for the show, Mike.
All right.
Thanks.
Adios.
If you like what you heard,
And even if you don't,
won't you please,
pretty please, subscribe.
subscribe?
Well, I hate to beg and I hate to plead, but